Diabetes New Zealand says that we as a country, we are on track for more than 500,000 cases by 2040. And they want to they're organising an event to raise awareness. The virtual diabetes register showed nearly 96,000 new cases in the past 3 years alone, and that brought the total number to 324,000. Now, in 2021, Diabetes New Zealand predicted an increase of 70 to 90%, and this data is close to the worst possible outcome. Diabetes New Zealand's Chief Executive is Heather Verry, and she's with us now. Heather, good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon. Yes, they're shocking stats, aren't they?
Aren't they? Well, I know. I mean, those numbers, and in such a short time. Before we get into that, Heather, I just wanted to differentiate. There are two types of diabetes. Can you explain?
Yes, there's type 1 and type 2, and type 1 is an autoimmune disease, and that's not really reflected in these figures. Type 1 is one that you get. There's nothing you can do to stop yourself getting it, whereas type 2 is a disease which comes on over time, and it's sort of the pancreas, sort of in layman's terms, starts to give up working due to the build-up of sugars in your veins and your system, and so you end up with that's generally due to lifestyles.
Yes, so
and it can be reversed.
Yes, and which is really important. So you mentioned sugars. Obviously, it's bad lifestyle. It's not moving. It's eating sugary foods, processed foods, all that stuff over the years, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And look, few people realise that carbohydrates actually contain sugar. They don't realise just how much sugar there is in, just even potatoes and breads and things like that. So that's why we do these awareness campaigns to make people just sort of realise what's involved and how important it is to be careful with this type of food that you actually eat.
Can we quickly look at what is pre-diabetes?
Prediabetes is when you start to get if you have a blood sugar, a blood test, it'll start to show that you're starting to the markers are showing that you're trending up. Now, we try and promote everyone to go and have a blood test on a yearly basis so that they can track it. And if you see that, and the doctor will tell you, you've got pre-diabetes, and if you don't do something to change, you're potentially going to get diabetes. So that's your opportunity to make your lifestyle change and then actually absolutely stop getting the diabetes. So you don't have to get into the diabetes phase and then work on the basis of trying to get your diabetes into remission, which is that much harder than preventing it.
So do you think in general we aren't really aware as we should be about the different types of diabetes, but also the preventions, as a country?
Well, I think as a country there's a little bit of in some families there's generational diabetes, and some people just sort of say, oh well, look, my family gets diabetes, so I will. Well, that doesn't need to happen. It can be stopped. It doesn't have to happen. So there's that sort of incidence happening, which is really unfortunate. We are becoming a nation where we're not moving as much as we normally do, and probably eating too many fast foods and things like that. And unfortunately, we're getting diabetes at a younger age. And I think what people don't really understand and don't connect are the complications that come from diabetes. So for renal disease, 50% of that is due to diabetes, which is really massive. And there's something
so
like...
So you're talking about like losing your sight? No, heart.
No, this is your liver. This is...
your liver.
Yes, your liver. So definitely blindness, absolutely. There's blindness associated with diabetes. But yes, there's in cardiac, it causes strokes and cardiac. And also there's something like about 700 lower limb amputations a year. And that's massive because that has a real social and economic impact on a person. There's a lot to do with diabetes.
Yeah. Look, Heather, it sounds like there's a lot. I mean to ask you this, what was the virtual diabetes mean? How did people do this?
The virtual diabetes register is what the Ministry of Health keep, and that's sort of the data collection to show how many people have got diabetes. One of the issues we have is that it doesn't record whether you're type 1 or type 2.
Right.
You really need, it really needs to be differentiated because it's very hard to sort of target the support into the specific areas that need it when you don't really know, because it's different treatment and different support methods and medication that you would have. So we've just managed to get, after many years, funding for CGMs, which are the continuous glucose monitors, and the pumps. Now, they're life-changing, and that's for all people with type 1 diabetes. So absolutely life-changing for them. It helps them to manage their diabetes, and that will help prevent them from the complications, and also hospitalisation, which can often occur with type 1s, because it doesn't matter how well you manage your diabetes, quite often things will happen, events will happen.
Yeah. You've said obviously more is needed, and funding is obviously one of them, but the government needs to take the lead. And do you mean obviously funding? You also mean bringing up awareness? What else should they be doing?
Well, I really do think there should be some more funding into the diabetes area, and that can be. We suggested to them an intervention as part of the report that we did 3 years ago, and that was when we looked at the UK, and they have a program which, when people are first diagnosed with diabetes, they're put onto this 2-year program, and that program works with them for learning, nutrition and exercise and movement, and they stay with that person for 2 years, and at the end of those 2 years, they're really in a good place, and where they've actually not only put their diabetes into remission, but they really have adopted and are living a better lifestyle. And they're starting to show the effects of that, because they've sort of almost stemmed the tide of the increase of diabetes in the UK. So these are the sort of really big, bold projects that we need to do. And gosh, it would be good to have a really big advertising like some other, a mental health have had. A lot of money's been put into reducing the stigma on mental health, and we need the same for diabetes. There's a real stigma around diabetes, which is why people quite often won't admit it or go to their doctors to get checked.
Gosh, that's interesting, Heather. Is that right? Is that with 1 and 2? Is it just diabetes in general?
No, diabetes in general too. Unfortunately, the stigma with type 2, because it's associated with health, with lifestyle, and is that quite often the type 1s get put into that category as well, which is really hard on them, because for type 1, that they will often need the sugar burst. They'll need to bring their sugar levels up. And I know there's been occasions when someone's been eating some lollies, which is what they will refer to get their sugar levels straight up. And people will say to them, well, look, if you didn't eat those lollies, you wouldn't have diabetes. Or that's not the truth, that's not accurate, you see. So there's a lot of these, and that's why we're saying there's all this myth-busting that we need to do to make people aware that the condition of type 1 is quite different from type 2. Type 1, you can't do anything to prevent it. Type 2, you can.